Hello, welcome to this NFB Facebook Live featuring Alex Boya, a stunning, mesmerizing artist. This session is mainly aimed at watching how incredibly well Alex draws, but we'll be having some bits of conversation along the way. We are at the National Film Board of Canada headquarters in Montreal. I'm Judith Lessard-Bérubé. I'm a marketing manager here involved in the release of Alex Boya's latest film, Turbine. Hi, Alex.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm well.
What are you drawing now?
So I'm drawing, I'm going to draw a character in profile, as well as the environment behind this character.
For people watching us, I'd like to say if you have any question, you can send them to us. We'll pass along your questions to Alex Boya. Alex, while you keep drawing, I'd like to introduce you briefly to our viewers. So you were born in Bulgaria. You arrived in Montreal with your parents when you were a toddler?
Yeah, 2 years old.
2 years old. Your parents were artists as well, right?
Yes.
You studied animation at Concordia University. Your first NFB film, Focus, was a production part of the Hot House Mentorship Program. This film is now available online on the NFB website for those interested. Turbine is your second film directed here at the NFB. The world premiere was held at the Ottawa International Animation Festivals last September, and the film received an honorable mention for Best Canadian Animations. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Turbine is currently touring in festival. The film just won the Best Animated Film Award at the New York City Short Film Festival 2 weeks ago. I think you were there.
Yes.
Was it nice?
It was a lot of fun. Yes. Amazing people and really beautiful place.
So it's really nice. I'd like to start with the first question. So people haven't seen Turbine yet, so it's still touring in festival, but we can tell that it's an 8-minute short, and you're drawing. You're not using a tablet. You're doing it with your very own hand.
Yes.
So I was wondering really how many drawings you had to do to come up with this 8-minute short.
Yeah, so it's a lot of drawings, that's for sure. I mean, we're talking about approximately 4,000, a bit more than 4,000 images that are ink drawings, using, I guess, a bit like the tradition of medical illustration before computers, because there's a lot of detailed anatomical pieces that are drawn with ink to emulate the lithography technique, so the copper plate technique. And it was a lot of work, but at the same time it gave a lot of freedom, because you could pretty much distort your image as well as play with angles and with camera movements in a very freehand way.
Do you get any training in medical illustration, or is it something that you?
Yeah, so it's something that I love doing, and I still do a bit of it once in a while. And I served on many occasions as a freelancer in the medical field, and this included as animated medical depictions, as well as static depictions of different parts of the body and the functioning of the body. But what's really cool is once that instructional tone is distilled out of its function, and you start kind of trying to talk about things that are a little more abstract with the same opaque language. I find that extremely interesting, and that's pretty much what I was able to develop when I was working on Focus in the Hot House program here at the National Film Board, and it was a really an incredible opportunity to learn more about how to produce a film from beginning to end, and being supported with a specific type of visual language that wouldn't necessarily be as mainstream as if it was done in another way.
In my mind, medical drawing or illustration is very technical. So how do you find it interesting, artistically speaking?
It's interesting because often, first of all, I feel like we live in a world that's becoming very physical, while at the same time it's very digital, and things are kind of migrating to the virtual realm. But in the same time, things are very tangible, and we have this language that is working very well for things like engineering, as well as, again, physical education and medical stuff. But in the same time, what's interesting when you're trying to talk about things that are more, I guess, matters of the soul, I like better words, using the language that is defining physical things, because of the inability to find a better language, allows for an interesting visual presentation.
Do you have some medical illustrations with you, or do you have a book here that I see? Is it no?
Yeah, well, I got some references here and there, and it helps a lot sometimes when you're trying to look at specific parts of a body.
What's your toolkit like when you first day? We're in your office right now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come in, I don't know if you come in the morning or you more the
Yeah.
late starter.
Well, it's really nice to have the ability to study different ideas, and just kind of brainstorm visually as well as narratively when working on the film. And I think it's a really good environment for this. I think it's an environment, the film board, that promotes risk taking and getting out of your comfort zone to maybe find a different solution that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find if you're elsewhere.
You don't seem to need many different pens or pencils. All I see is here pages, and you need paper.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's depends what medium you're starting with. Usually, it's a good idea to try to unify the medium. I will eventually start using different inks as well as color, but usually what I try to do is avoid going, for example, in one part of the drawing with a certain medium, then go to another part of the drawing with a different medium, because I'd like it to kind of combine it and actually build the shape from beginning to end.
Do you use color often?
No,
It's not really.
No, I don't like color as much as I would like to.
So someone is asking online, really, what are your source of inspirations?
Well, in general, I kind of grew up with animation, like everyone. I mean, I watched all the Disneys. I love all the Disneys, as well as just Pixar movies and all that. So I really got a chance to see a lot of animation, like most people, and I love the classics. But I did see a few things, especially documentaries, that really helped as well, and I got obsessed with. Give you an example. From a very young age, I loved cooking shows, and I don't know how that fits in, but I mean, I think cooking shows is also an inspiration. Just the idea of focusing on the food and the ingredients.
How the things are made.
Yeah.
The process.
Exactly,
Creative
the process. Yeah, and I also love watching these YouTube videos of how things are made. So, for example, how is chocolate made, and you just kind of spend a whole evening watching these videos online of how things are being made in the factories.
And where did you get your inspiration for Turbine?
Well, Turbine came from a dream, actually. It was that's one of these stories that I probably distort as time goes on, but basically what happened is there was a dream. This guy over here wasn't facing me. Had to walk towards this creature that I call the Aerodynamic Man, and then he started whispering things in my ear and saying, talking about how he was transactional, so he would move from one place to another really quickly, and saying how that's the future and all that. But what was really interesting was when I was waking up, this voice that was this very almost like a something that was very like a distorted voice, but still very very discernible. But then as I was waking up, it ended up being the sound of the radiator of the air conditioner in my room. And I thought it was really cool because it started as a voice, but then as I was waking up and I wasn't sleeping and I was no longer in the dream state, I realized it was a monotonous sound of an air conditioner. From there came the idea that maybe our brains may be like they might be almost like satellite dishes that can kind of communicate with objects in a different state of consciousness. So that I thought that was really cool, and from there came the idea that these appliances would plot against the two characters in the film and try to have this ritual against their conscious consent. Because there's like a bunch of appliances. There's a blender in the film. There's a fridge. Actually, there's no fridge. There's an oven, and so on.
My question might be weird, but as you talked about the dream-like state. What are you feeling like when you're drawing? Like, I understand it's a physical experience. Like, you get into a certain state of mind. You're in contact with the material, the paper, the ink. Sometimes, is it as though like you're a musician and the blank page is your instrument? Like, how do you feel?
Well, it feels like documenting something. So it really feels like you're just facilitating like a transaction, because the ideas are usually they can be presented in different mediums and different time spaces. So in a sense, like it can be a short film, it can be a longer film, it can be something that's cyclical. So usually you want to just define this idea or this design or a bit like a sculpture, and then start documenting it as faithfully as you can. And that simplifies a lot of the confusion one can feel when making a film, because you're simply trying to be as faithful as you can to that original idea or that original inspiration, and it makes it simpler than if you were questioning yourself at every stage of the project.
Do you always know what you're going to draw, or you kind of let your hand play?
Usually, I do know quite clearly the narrative the narrative of what I'm drawing, but a lot of the decisions are being taken by the hand as you're defining your shapes, and that comes from, I guess,
the hand decides.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost like how an octopus has a brain on every tentacle. So I think that's like 9 brains in total, but I might be totally not scientifically accurate on this, but I do know that there's decisions that are being made with the tentacles on each division. But I think that in a way, when you're training your hand, especially in drawing, it's almost like I call it kinetic hieroglyphs. So it's like this idea that you build things from simpler shapes with your motor memory, your muscle memory, your motricity.
When did you decide to use like paper and pen just to draw? Have you explored other material before, or when did you make that decision?
From like kindergarten, probably. Just drawing and painting and all that. It's just such a pleasure to do this. And it really it's a nice immediate way to kind of I guess have fossils of your thoughts on paper when you're using drawing and just these types of mediums. But
Have you used the tablet or other support?
Yeah. So especially with regards to Turbine as well as animation in general, it's not always easy to be traditional, especially when you don't really consider yourself traditional while you're working. It's just that it felt like the best medium for that specific project. But there's no I'm not reserved to there's no reservation towards technology. The thing with computer is that it can do repetitive tasks much more easily than you. So when you're, for example, you're scanning things and you're digitizing them, it gives you a feedback faster. You can see what's going on the screen and make a decision based on, immediate previews of the animation. So I think it's a really good tool.
I know that both of your parents are visual artists as well. I guess they have acquired their skills and had their first artistic experience while they were in Bulgaria, so in a communist country. Your reality as an artist is obviously very different from theirs, especially working at the NFB, I guess. Do you talk with them about that, or?
Well, I think it's interesting especially that these things it's almost like a subconscious. It's like a collective subconscious, and you're kind of you paint you make your painting with these underlying subconscious thoughts. So in the case of Turbine, it's really what I think is really cool with the whole research and the whole narrative is that it's kind of like this mix of the two worlds, because there's clearly a lot of people told me that there's this clear Eastern European influence in the visuals and the style and just maybe the color tone as well. Maybe echoes animated films that were made in the past from in socialist countries. But at the same time, the film clearly also discusses this kind of almost like this American dream idea with all the tools and all the things that are bettering our lives, and how they're surrounded by these appliances that they nurture in the film. So it's kind of like almost as if the film is from both worlds at the same time, and around the topic of technology, I think this is really what inspires me in that sense, in a surrealist tone, of course.
I was wondering if people who are watching online, if you want to ask Alex any questions, we're live, so we can pass the questions along to Alex. There's is that a train?
Yeah.
There's a train in your film, moving really in a special manner, I guess.
He's a
Was
star.
that from a dream as well?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Can you tell
maybe.
people how you animated your train?
Yeah, well, it was I literally just took a caterpillar's movement and changed the caterpillar with the train, and it was a very very abrupt, animation in general, because it was very collagey, and it was a bit different from the rest of the film, and it felt right to sort of keep it different, or keep it very geometric and choppy. But I think it's a character that's going to come again and again in future films as well, because there's something about this idea of a train that's moving in this way, and it's kind of dragging itself from one place to the next in a very slow and almost not very enthusiastic way, and I kind of like that a lot about it.
Someone's asking online, what would be your best advice for an animator, like a young emerging artist?
Well, I think that in general, especially with regards to making a film, it's really a sequence of images with sound. So if the focus is on this, and I think it's a privilege to be in one of these fields where you still have a direct connection with your product, in the sense that it is at the end of the end of the day, it's still a sequence of images and sound, and the output of these two things as soon as possible, one way or another, is, I think, the best advice, to have a body of work that grows with time, because it is a privilege to be in a field where you have a direct connection with the final outcome of the time you spend on something, and that's really rare in today's day and age, where I think we're becoming more and more specialized, and things kind of depend on others. But when you're making a film, especially animated film, because there's a great potential for independence when you do have support from sources of support that help that allow you to make these risks to begin with and be creative. That's extremely important. But once that is covered, if it is possible for that to be covered, then it's really you're not really constrained by that much financial obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really working with really expensive cameras or stuff like that. You get to do the image you want to make on paper, if you're using paper, of course. There's different fields. So basically, the advice is get these images and the sound out as soon as possible, and take a shot.
Who's your favorite animator?
I have a few. I mean, I love I love all kinds of things. I mean, I'm a big fan of for example, I love the work of Smackmeyer, who's a big influence, because it really opened my mind to blending things that aren't supposed to be. They're not supposed to be acting, but they kind of are. So I think I like that. I like the comedy in it as well.
Thanks, Alex. I'm sure you'll keep drawing. That's obvious to me. I hope you'll have the chance to make more films, because the focus is online for people who want to watch it. Turbine, it's gonna stay on the festival circuit for a couple more months, but we hope to release it online in the current of 2019. I'd like to thank everyone who listened to us, watched Alex's hands dance on the page. Thanks for those who asked their questions. Turbine is a production by Jelena Popovic from the NFB studio. Remember, you can always watch a ton of NFB films, our collection, anywhere, anytime, on nfb.ca and through our apps. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank
Alex.
you very much,
Thanks a lot.
everyone.